Hello and welcome to another episode of Virtual Health Club. I am your host, Dr. Millie Lytle. I'm the founder of NatMed Coach, and I am extremely excited to have my old buddy, Michelle Carinne here. Michelle and I have known each other for several years, but we finally decided to start working together. And so Michelle has joined NatMed Coach as a health coach, and she's available for wellness coaching, as well as will be presenting in Virtual Health Club for the next several months. And so today is her kickoff. She'll be talking about a very common topic, which is stress and how to cope with stress. So we will be learning all about mindset and resilience today, and how you can, first of all, I think, learn to identify stress. A lot of people don't even know that they're stressed. And then also really take matters into your own hands. And here at Health Club, of course, you know that we empower you to prevent and treat chronic disease with self-care, because this is where you do most of your health care, is self-care at home. And so this webinar will focus on finding the calm during the storm, practicing mindful moments that you can integrate into your day, and learning the basics of resilience. So I'll let Michelle handle all that, but I just want to introduce her more thoroughly. Michelle Carinne is a national board certified health and wellness coach. She is a certified health education specialist, and she is also a candidate to complete her master's in nutrition. Michelle enjoys learning, time with family, traveling, eating lots of veggies, and gardening, which she will be sharing her joy of gardening with us in a couple of months. Gardening and cooking have also become a huge love of hers, and she loves to share the journey that food takes from the earth to our kitchens, to our plates, and into every cell of our bodies, allowing us to connect with food in a nourishing and meaningful way. And food is also a wonderful contributor to emotional and mental self-care as well. So thank you so much, Michelle, for being here today. We're so excited to have you, and I will let you take over.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Millie. I really do appreciate the introduction. That was wonderful. And, I'm so excited to be here today just to talk to you about mindfulness and resilience, two incredibly valuable approaches to self-care. And I'm going to share some tools that you can hopefully take away with you in your everyday life to utilize. I'm going to walk us through two areas of wellness that really serve as foundational pieces to self-care. And have become buzzwords in the wellness industry, and that's mindfulness and resilience. So I'm going to share my screen. I have a presentation for you guys. All right. So those two buzzwords are mindfulness and resilience. They're two practices and ways of thinking and being that work closely together and really helping us to overcome and bounce back from everyday challenges, both big and small. And we all know that this past year has brought about many challenges, right, within our lives. So their purpose is to change our relationships to our thoughts and our feelings, and to defy our natural human tendencies or negative thinking that we naturally are inclined to do, leading us to truly experience a sense of calm in the movement of life. So I'm going to start off today with a little story. So in my work, I've always placed value on what we call in the coaching world vicarious experiences. So what is a vicarious experience? It's the act of hearing other individuals' success stories in behavior change, and acknowledge our own capabilities and being able to have that same success. So it's understanding our human capacity and being able to connect with someone else's success story to build that belief within ourselves, or what we call self-efficacy, to realize that we have that same ability to create that success as well. So before we get into the weeds of what mindfulness and resilience is all about, I hope that this story can really just paint a picture and charge up some of our desires when it comes to adding that mindfulness and resilience in our lives. So one of the most profound client stories that I had and was able to be a part of involved a woman who was working in the corporate world with an incredibly intense role that involved a lot of responsibility, time and energy. It was a lot of stress and kind of feeling as if it was the constant go. Yet her day never ended just there. When she was at home, she had to do a full-time job as well. She had 2 children, and one of her children had disabilities. And so she was serving as that main support for her child's care. So, from the minute she woke up to the minute that she went to sleep, her day was nonstop. And she came into my office feeling burnt out and defeated, and acknowledging that her lifestyle just wasn't sustainable. And she needed to so desperately want to make a change. So as we started unfolding her goals and really kind of helping her to create a vision, as I do with all of my clients, I asked her to paint a picture of her best self. What is it that she saw herself doing 6 months down the road? What would she be doing more of? What would she be doing less of? What did she picture as her best self? And she said, Michelle, I simply want to feel at peace in the stillness of the tornado. So her goal was this. It wasn't her desire to get rid of the hardships, of the stress, of the to-do list. She knew in her heart that avoiding or reducing stress and her to-do list was not necessarily possible or would be able to be to the point that she felt like she could actually feel that reduction in stress. But rather what she wanted to be able to do was simply adapt and work with the stressors she had as part of her life, to be able to feel grounded in all of the movement that went on in her life and not feel as if she was being swept away by the tornadoes and the vortex and losing her ability to control that center. So her vision was to feel grounded and to know that she could stay centered even in the midst of the whirlwind of her day. This grounding, this centering, this ability to find stillness in our tornadoes of life, she defined the very essence of resilience. So I encourage you, as we walk through the session today, think about the tornadoes in your life that you feel lack of control or feel stressed out, the things that you want to change to improve, right? Is it health issues? Is it navigating through this pandemic? Are there wellness goals that you want to focus on? Is it the racial injustices that have been occurring, taking care of children, especially during this time? Is it your finances, maybe a relationship, your job, whatever it may be, all that's going on in the world, right? Thinking about those things and what would it be like to find your ground and find that peace and being present among those thoughts and those worries, rather than allowing yourself to attach to them and lose that control, right? That sense of grounding. Where do you even begin and how do you even do that? So I'm going to walk you through the basics of how resilience and mindfulness can help you to find that stillness in the tornadoes of life. So let's start with resilience. So what is resilience? Resilience. Psychologists define resilience as the process of adapting well in adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress. So this stress or these adversities can be family and relationship problems, as I mentioned, health issues, workplace, financial stressors, marriage and divorce, job issues, job loss, social stressors and political stressors, natural disasters, this very year of the pandemic, climate change, racial injustice. Resilience is the ability to perceive one's threats or challenges in a grounded manner, and to not only bounce back when that adversity presents itself, but also allow for personal growth along the way and a true sense of understanding who you are as a being. The American Psychological Association says that while certain factors might make some individuals more resilient than others, resilience isn't necessarily a personality trait that only some people have, right? We may think of individuals who are always calm and composed and think, well, how are they able to do that? They've always been that way. But on the contrary, resilience is really a set of behaviors. It involves thoughts and actions that anyone can learn and develop. So it's not this above and beyond practice, but it's really simple steps that we can take, and each and every one of us has the capacity to carry out in our lives. like building a muscle, right? Increasing your resilience takes time. And it entails focusing on 4 components. We have connection, wellness, finding purpose, and healthy thinking. So let's start with the first, connection. It's seeking help and building your support systems, whether it's through family and friends, close loved ones, maybe it's working with a therapist or a health coach, but those individuals in your life that you can create as your support system to provide that empathetic and understanding support that you need to help you get through and remind yourself that they're here to help support you in building that resilience. Next, we have wellness, right? And when we think of wellness, we can think of the word self-care, right? This is the focus of NatMed. So just for joining today's session, you took some time for you. You carved out time to learn and grow and focus on your self-care. And wellness can also entail exercise and taking care of our bodies through healthy eating and mindfulness practices, right? All of these areas and these activities that we can focus when it comes to wellness. Then we have finding purpose. So whether it's helping others to take small action, helping others or maybe taking small actions to really find purpose in your day by asking the question of what are some positive things I can do about a problem in my life? So for example, if we have a health condition, what are some ways that maybe I can learn a little bit more about that health condition and educate myself? Are there certain lifestyle changes that I can make and I can be in control of? So being able to kind of shift your thinking and find areas of life that are important to you. And lastly, we have healthy thinking. This is perspective. This is kind of what I define as perspective. So it's being able to shift your thinking to understand that you may not be able to change a stressful experience or event. You can change your perspective, as in how you interpret it and how you respond to it. So it's a huge component of mindfulness. And what I perceive really serves as that foundational piece to all of these other components, right? When we have healthy thinking, when we have positive thinking, we can enable ourselves to build those other tools in living a resilient life. So healthy thinking is really that starting point that allows us to practice these other components. The thoughts and the ways in which we relate to them is the very essence of living a mindful and resilient life. So what does embracing healthy thoughts mean? To help put it into perspective, Alphonse Carr really just has a really great quote, and he says, we can complain because rose bushes have thorns, or we can rejoice because thorns have roses. So it's similar to that glass half full, glass half empty type of approach, right? It's how we perceive our thoughts and all that occurs in our lives that really dictates whether or not we'll experience a positive or negative experience. So the deficit or fullness thinking, right? What we're missing versus what we have, what we desire versus what we're grateful for, the fear of failure versus the belief in success. So whether we think that we won't be able to overcome versus to think that we feel we're resilient and we can get through the challenges that we're experiencing. So how do we create that shift from negative thinking to positive thinking, to living a resilient life simply by shifting our thought process? So here's an actionable breakdown of going through the mental process of creating the shift. It starts with becoming present with our thoughts, right? Then it's actively breaking any negative thoughts and emotions tied to that adverse experience so that we can really start to make the shift towards positive thinking. The next step is looking both ways. So not only thinking of the worst case scenario, but thinking of the best case scenario and allowing ourselves to really question the worst case scenario. It's confronting our fears.
Michelle, you're kind of breaking up a bit.
Okay, is this a little better?
Maybe, hopefully.
Maybe. We'll try again. If I keep breaking up, just let me know. I can try just the computer.
Okay.
Okay. The beauties of working remotely, right? So as I said, all of these are steps to creating that shift. And resilience is grounded in the practice of mindfulness, which we'll learn about in a little bit. But let's first take a look at each of these components of resilience. So becoming present. Dr. Tim Sharp said, he's the founder of the Happiness Institute in Australia, said that we can't change a negative thought if we're not aware of it. And we can't appreciate a positive thought if we didn't even know we had it. So your thoughts, for example, creating positive emotions, are they creating those positive emotions? Or do they associate with unpleasant emotions, right? So those positive emotions may be happiness and feeling content, and those negative emotions may be stress or anxiety. It's about becoming present with the thoughts we are experiencing and acknowledging that they're there, whether they're positive or negative. Then we look at making the break. So think of a time when you dwelled on a negative thought. What were the results? The high blood pressure, you didn't really feel this ability to concentrate, maybe it was anger or shortness of breath, an emotional response, maybe a pit in your stomach. This was an experience where you allowed the negative emotion to take charge. So creating a behavioral break, this act allows the brain and the body to just completely switch gears and focus on something else entirely, allowing us to break that negative thought process and then open up the opportunity to think of a positive one. This leads to the next step, and that is looking both ways, right? So one of my favorite quotes is a poem by Erin Hansen, and it says, "There's freedom waiting for you on the breezes of the sky." And you ask, well, what if I fail? Oh, but darling, what if you fly? So we often think about the worst case scenario in every possible situation, and it sets us up for poor resilience and unnecessary stress. We as human beings tend to naturally draw ourselves to the negative, to the worst case scenario. But what if we were to think of the positive, right? If this thought is bad, is it really as bad as it seems? And if it is bad, will it last forever? How would someone who you know is calm and cool and collected be able to think of in this situation? What's really in my control, and have I even considered that? So asking those questions allow us to truly start to create that shift and think about the positives of the thought that we're experiencing. And then lastly is confronting our fear. So fear is something that we naturally try to avoid. But if we do this, we lose the opportunity to build our resilience and to overcome challenges. So envision the success, right? Instead of thinking of the failure, envision the success. Think of an experience maybe where you were successful, you had a fear, and you were able to overcome that. Relive that and apply it to this particular situation. So that creating of the shift allows us to practice resilience and be really feeling grounded in the adversity that we do experience. And as you see here, mindfulness is the basis of all of this, right? In order to create that shift in thinking, awareness of how resilient we are and how we approach the thoughts and the emotions that we're experiencing, the most critical first step. So Professor Siegel, he's a clinical psychologist at Harvard Medical School and the author and lecturer of The Science of Mindfulness. He defines mindfulness as awareness, present experience, acceptance. So he says it's about remembering to be aware, to pay attention, and developing the intention to pay attention. And I'll say that again. So developing the intention to pay attention. And then lastly, adding in a non-judgmental component. So accepting those thoughts rather than attaching any emotion or perception. So I look at this as several components. The actual intention of bringing ourselves into the present moment to simply notice and be aware of our thoughts and feelings, but not allowing ourselves to attach to them. And simply acknowledging them, sitting with them, and accepting them without judgment. And it's remembering to be aware of our thoughts and then to tune in. So that first step is really remembering to actually do the act. When we establish this way of thinking, we open doors to different impacts that mindfulness can have both on the body and the mind, which I'll talk about in a little bit. And just like we need to practice a language to become fluent, we need to practice mindfulness to become more mindful in our lives. But the first step is really kind of peeling back the layers and understanding how our brains work in the first place and why we're even talking about mindfulness today. So Siegel explores the scientific basis behind mindfulness and how it plays a role in defying these hardwired tendencies that we have to seek pleasure and to avoid pain. It's a survival mechanism that our ancestors actually had many, many years ago, but it's actually been continued on in generations to the point where we now experience it in our society. And we don't necessarily have this fight or flight need, but we apply it to many situations in our lives. So Siegel paints us a picture of the survival mechanism to help us understand. He uses the example of an ancestor foraging through the forest and coming across a great matter. And is it a rock or is it an animal, right? If we perceive it as a rock, it very well may be. But if we're wrong, then it surely means death, right? But if we perceive it as an animal, as a threat, and we remove ourselves from that situation, it can mean that we survive. So in many instances, our ancestors were able to think of automatic threats and constantly perceive everything as a threat and create this fight or flight response in order to survive. And we've implemented that, and it's continued on through our brain processes and through evolution to the point at where now we still use that survival thought process. But most often these life and death threats are not frequently presented. But it's still applied to so many areas of our lives, many of which of those areas, again, are not really truly part of our survival. So we constantly are thinking about the past or the future, the what ifs, the what could be, the what should I do, the what could I have done, the what should I have done, what I want more of, what will be if I do this. And in a nutshell, it's what choices we make and whether those will make us happy rather than allowing ourselves to be in the present experience with acceptance. So where does mindfulness come into play and how can it defy these natural tendencies in our brains? So as I mentioned, there's a neurological impact that mindfulness can have on our brain function. And it allows us to break that human tendency and bring ourselves to the present moment so that we're no longer thinking in that fight or flight response. On top of that, it improves our brain function and our physical health. So it's associated with brainwave functions, associated with being happy and engaged. And it's actually been shown to extend our telomeres, which improves, the aging process. It's been shown to support us with our sleep quality, pain management, and also reducing the cortisol, which is our stress hormone. And then lastly, mindfulness builds resilience. Again, our ability to bounce back and adapt when we're faced with adversity. So Siegel explains that it allows us to accept and see things as they are rather than how we want them to be. So let's explore a little bit more of that connection with mindfulness and resilience. So resilience, again, is the ability to cope with and recover from those difficulties and adversities. But it can be difficult to study, right? Because we need to have an experience in which we're experiencing adversity. Well, this year, right, with the hardships that we have been experiencing, kind of taking a moment and asking how you're dealing with it. What are the emotions you've experienced? And how have you felt you've been able to cope with them? How do you feel mindfulness and integrating that into your life would help you to become more resilient as we push through this, right? So a study by Galante et al., they looked to determine the participation of a mindfulness-based group program and to see if it could reduce stress levels for students who were trying to complete exams. And the study showed, right, that Students who practiced mindfulness showed a complete reduction in stress and allowed the students to feel that they could manage the stressors of exams prior to having done these mindfulness practices. So when we look at this study, we can see how mindfulness serves as a powerful tool to shift our orientation, to shift our perception of a particular situation and how we choose to respond to it. So again, bringing ourselves out of that whirlwind of the tornadoes that we experience of our emotions and into that quiet, peaceful center. When we do that, we really bring awareness, and that awareness opens the opportunity to creating that shift towards a resilient life. So mindfulness, empowers us again, so we can make that break in our negative thinking. We may all be at different stages when it comes to our mindfulness practices. And again, just being empathetic with yourself and knowing that you can't run a marathon without starting with a mile. So I'm going to kind of share some mindfulness practices with you today, but just kind of giving an example. So here we have a woman and her thoughts. And those thoughts in many ways are examples of her being mindful. So being aware of her present experience with acceptance. She's noticing that her bottom hurts, and it's probably because, she's sitting on a hard rocky ground, and she notices that from afar that it may rain. And these are just two thoughts. But how she perceives those thoughts will dictate whether she has a positive or negative experience. So put yourself in this situation. So it could be, all right, I think it's going to rain. How would you be thinking in this moment? I'm going to get wet. I don't have a pair of dry clothes. My cell phone's going to get wet. I don't know what I'm going to do. All thoughts, right? All natural fears. We may feel that we're experiencing a sense of tenseness or worry. Or just sitting there and noticing those emotions, thoughts, because they're still happening. But that awareness allows you to create a shift and becoming resilient to that experience. So let's create the shift, okay? So first, becoming present, right? Noticing that we're experiencing these thoughts, okay? It's going to rain, I'm feeling uneasy. That's the foundational step. And then we make the break, right? So let me just kind of take a deep breath or notice a bird that's flying nearby, disconnecting from the negative thoughts that I'm experiencing. And then look both ways. So maybe it's asking yourself, is the situation really that bad? Now, of course, if there's a lightning storm, right, we have to go and we have to leave because we could be in imminent danger. But is it really that bad if it's not in that case, right? Maybe behind her, there's a house. She has a beautiful view for her home, right? But maybe there's a house, or maybe she's near her car and she'll get dry again. Hey, I've gotten wet before, it's okay, I'm not gonna melt. I'll dry up again. And confronting the fear, right? So her fear is that she's going to get wet, but has she gotten wet before from the rain, right? Is this something I've experienced in the past, and how was I able to get through it? Maybe this really isn't as bad as I perceive it to be. So mindfulness is not shunning those negative feelings away, but it's really allowing your thoughts and beliefs to enter your awareness so that you can create that shift. With practice, exercising this can really help to create that shift and open the door to a resilient life. But it takes time and it takes practice. So what are some mindfulness practices that we can experience? So there's a lot, there's so many avenues we can take, but today I'm just going to share with you a couple of basics. The first one is mindful breathing. So mindful breathing is just using your breath. So something that we do every second of every part of our day, right? And it's so foundational to being in the present. So I'm going to go through these, and then we're going to kind of walk back and try a little bit of a mindful breathing exercise. Mindful eating. So mindful eating allows us to actually use all the different senses in our bodies to bring awareness to the present moment. So it could be something as simple as starting off with a raisin or a piece of dark chocolate, and holding it in your hand and just noticing the textures of it, noticing the colors of it, noticing how it feels in your hand, noticing the ridges and the dips and the bumps on it. And then when you're eating it, noticing the aromas, noticing the taste, noticing how it feels in your mouth. We're constantly on the go and constantly distracted during our eating times. So when we bring ourselves into that present moment, we create an entirely new relationship to food that allows us to build that mindfulness. And lastly, we have mindful imagery. And this is kind of a combination of two, but something very simple that I actually personally really enjoy doing. You know, sometimes simply just doing a mindful imagery exercise allows me to kind of do a little what I like to call micro mindfulness practice. So mindful imagery allows you to look at an object. So what I always encourage is looking outside. Maybe it's looking at a tree, maybe a storefront window, maybe a car, and just noticing it. Not looking at it as that exact object, but going deeper. Looking at the colors, looking at the textures of it, the ridges, you know, what's going on with its movement. Is it moving? Looking at its reflections, really digging into it and allowing ourselves to truly be aware of that experience. Again, it takes time, but these are such simple beginner ways that we can start to integrate mindfulness into our day. Even if it's something as simply noticing when you're washing the dishes. So we're constantly thinking about what to do, where to go, what needs to be done. But simply look at our soap suds, you know, building up and washing the dishes and seeing the water stream down and just noticing that. So I encourage you to kind of think about one thing that you would be willing to do today that adds some sort of mindfulness practice into it. And we're going to walk through a breathing exercise just to get a sense of, well, what's mindful breathing about? You know, what can we do and how can I implement this into my day? So just sitting in a quiet room, hopefully everyone is, where you won't be disturbed. And just close your eyes and focus your attention on your breath. Noticing the sensations, each inhale and exhale. And just allowing yourself to disconnect from all that's going on and focus on your breathing. It's natural for your attention to get distracted, but remember that mindfulness is acceptance. So just accepting those thoughts that are coming through. And then gently allowing yourself to disconnect and bring yourself back to the breathing. And then maybe for the next couple breaths, deepening the breath a little bit, allowing more oxygen to flow through with each inhale and with each exhale. And then return to that normal breathing. Breathing in and breathing out. While focusing on your breath, allow some thoughts and feelings and emotions to enter your awareness. And just noticing what they are. How am I responding to them? Am I distracted? Am I fighting these thoughts? What am I feeling right now at this moment in time? Am I feeling any judgment? Am I judging for not being able to concentrate? Or am I feeling at ease? And if you're experiencing a negative thought, maybe it's something you have to do, or wondering when this presentation is going to end, or thinking of the next steps ahead in the future or the past, allow your mind to think of one positive thought that counteracts that negative. And just notice how you feel. You allow yourself to think of a positive. Now let yourself get rid of those thoughts and bring yourself back to your breathing. So just kind of saying, hey, thoughts, I know you're there, but I'm just going to disconnect for a moment and focus on my breath. And whenever you're ready, you can slowly open your eyes and bring yourself back to the here and now. So I encourage you to kind of think about, what were some things that I noticed? What were the emotions that I experienced? What were some thoughts that I had? If I was thinking of a negative thought, right, or a worry or a care, or if there was something that was on my mind, what was one positive thing that I was able to think about? And how did those emotions and those feelings and those thoughts that I was noticing, how did they shift? So focusing on the breath is such a powerful tool to bring us into that present moment, right? Like I mentioned, we're constantly breathing, constantly, throughout the day, and it's something that we sometimes forget about. But it's an amazing tool that we have with us to be able to just focus on being in the moment. And then actively, with these other types of practices, mindful eating, mindful imagery, it's using the tools around you. You could do mindful walking, right? When you're walking, it's things that you're doing naturally throughout the day, but you're adding an awareness component to it. And it can be extremely powerful in allowing ourselves to truly understand ourselves and be open to building that resilience in our lives. So before we leave here today, I just wanted to share a couple of tools and apps that are really helpful. There's Headspace, Buddhify, Calm, Simple Habit. I personally use Headspace and Calm. These are just some apps that encourage you to check out. They're wonderful when it comes to kind of having more of that guided mindfulness, right? If you find that it's challenging to just sit in a quiet room and immerse yourself in a breathing exercise or that guided imagery, these are amazing tools that guide you through those practices and help you to kind of get a sense of what mindfulness is all about at all different levels. So, if it's something that you're curious about, definitely encourage you to start there. And also remind yourself of where you are in your wellness journey. If it's something as simple as wanting to educate yourself a little bit more on what mindfulness is about, or again, like I mentioned, maybe it's something as simple as, I don't have to breathing exercise. I wash the dishes every day. And maybe I can integrate some sort of mindful thinking when I'm doing that, or something along the lines of a habit that I have in my life. So I hope today helped you to just understand a little bit about the practices of mindfulness and resilience, and kind of serve as that starting point of building those tools. We've gone through a lot this year in humanity, and knowing that, understanding our natural tendencies and learning how to defy them through these practices can really open up the doors to so many possibilities. And again, whatever you may choose to do, whatever you may choose to explore when it comes to mindfulness practices, remember that it's a step towards building your self-care. So thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Oh my gosh, you reminded me how much I love mindfulness and what like a foundational component of self-care it is. And honestly, like one can include mindfulness into their life even without making any changes. Like even if you don't feel like you're ready to make any changes in your life, you can include the art of paying attention, also known as mindfulness, into any moment of your day as you're doing any behavior. I mean, even as you're getting triggered, even as you're like completely in pain, even as if you're not enjoying or you're enjoying your experience, just by, as you mentioned, turning your head to the right and turning your head to the left. I mean, it's just such an amazing metaphor for self-understanding and for just opening up the door a crack to a different perspective. And then so that eventually when you're ready, only when the circumstances are right, you can begin to make, small behavior changes if that's what you're going for. So thanks so much for that amazing reminder. And I think probably to many people who are listening, it'll be brand new material, and you delivered it so eloquently. I am slightly concerned about the quality of the sound, so I hopefully it translates okay on the replay. Yeah. I do want to open it up to see if there's any questions. Are there any questions?
Yes. I can't, my camera's on, but I don't see myself. So I don't know if you can see me, but the light is on. So I don't know what happened. I actually had to close out and come back in because my screen froze. But anyway, first of all, one of the takeaways for this, I guess there's a lot of things I guess I don't think about. And one thing that you brought to my attention, Michelle, is in terms of the breathing. So thinking about the negative thoughts, I guess when I think, I just think. I don't think whether it's negative or positive. So that's something for me to focus on, to say, okay, I'm thinking negative right now, and to think of something else that's positive to shift that thought. Yeah. So thank you for that. And secondly, in terms of when we were doing the breathing exercise, when you go through, whether you're using Mindspace or different apps, they talk about breathing. Is there a time when you do one breathing versus the other? Like some will say breathe through your nose and exhale through your mouth, or some will say breathe through your nose and exhale through your nose. So is there a certain time when you should use one over the other?
Yeah, I mean, I think at least, my understanding, and again, I mean, there's certainly experts in the yoga field and individuals who carry out breathing exercises, in their professions, may know more about this. But I think when it comes to that differences in the breathing patterns, right? So I was kind of focusing on the deeper breathing to the moment. It's allowing just the mind to focus on a different approach, right? So we notice certain things when we're breathing through our nose rather than through our mouths. And so kind of creating that focus of that breathing can really help us to bring us into the present moment, right? Those are the things that we're focusing on. So it helps us to kind of, again, really shift the thinking a little bit and just focus on the different senses that we're experiencing in that moment. So, yeah.
Okay.
And I think there's different breathing techniques for different purposes, I guess. So
Yeah.
Generally like a longer breathing out, like breathing in for like 4, breathing out for 5 or 7, what have you, activates the parasympathetic nervous system. So it's a relaxation approach to breathe out longer than breathe in. So oftentimes you'll hear that. But then sometimes it's grounded in theory, like yoga theory or different theories from around the world. So people tend to apply what they know. But in all honesty, I think any breathing, like mindful breathing, is beneficial.
Yeah.
Okay,
And as you mentioned, it's also really good to train yourself to breathe through the nose, because when you breathe in through the nose, you're getting all that filter, first of all, because you have all these hairs and you have mucus, and you're getting a cleaner air than you are when you're breathing through your mouth. And then it's more direct to the brain, activating the pineal gland, the pituitary gland, access to the blood-brain barrier. So it is a better quality inhale when you breathe in through the nose than when you breathe in through the mouth. And then whether you breathe out through the mouth or out through the nose, I think, again, those kind of are more rooted in different theories, and maybe some benefit, or just, you can maybe feel like you're getting a deeper exhale if you breathe out through the mouth, more relief or release. But in any case, breath heals, right? So.
Yes. And you're right, to your point, all the physiological benefits, to the different types of breathing exercise. It's pretty incredible.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If there's no more questions, I want to thank everybody for tuning in today, whether you're tuning in live or on replay. And again, we're going to get this out to as many people as possible. And I will put it on the NatMed Coach website for free, actually, partially because of the quality, but also part of, I want to introduce Michelle. I mean, the quality of the content is stellar, and I wanted to introduce Michelle to as many people as possible. She is part of the NatMed Coach team, and she will be coaching next month on sustainable eating. So that's another topic of yours. I know that you're very knowledgeable on, and something that also allows us to merge ourselves with our environment in a different way, and think about food in a different way, think about our health in a different way. So definitely tune in for that. And she's also available for private coaching, and that's available on our website at natmedcoach.com. So definitely reach out to us if you're interested in meeting Michelle on a one-on-one basis. Otherwise, we'll see you next time on Health Club. Our next conversation will be on sanctuary, and that's with nurse practitioner Chelsea Bartlett. She'll be here to present the final blues. Well, actually, no, we've got 2 more Blue Zone topics. We've got community and we've got sanctuary. So this month we're doing sanctuary, which is all about finding your own private space and area for spirituality or prayer, etc. And she'll be here to talk about that next week. Do I have the date offhand? On the 27th. Next week on the 20th, we've got community coaching. So we're going to be doing sharing is self-caring. Self-caring is sharing. If you want to tune in for some group coaching at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Otherwise, and I'll be doing Nutrition 101 in early February. So definitely check our calendar at natmedcoach.com. And we'll see you soon. Thanks again, Michelle. That was absolutely wonderful. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks, Dr. Millie. Have a great week. And
thank you. Take care.